Okay, welcome to the very first lecture. Okay, so lectures will, like I said, there'll be a combination of PowerPoints and videos that I've created, and generally they're narrated. I do make some where I'm talking over the whole video. You'll see me over the whole video. But for this one, I'm only going to be on this slide, and then you just hear narration for the rest of the time. I do a combination of both because sometimes seeing yourself on camera while you're lecturing is weird. So go ahead and dive in to this lecture. Don't forget, take notes because there will be a couple of questions that you'll have to answer at the end. All right. Okay, this is where we start, right? So, what we're going to start with is we're going to start with the nature and purpose of dress. So, why do we wear what we wear? And what does it denote out of our character, right? Fashion, clothing has a utility, it has a function, it does something for us. But what we do with that function has changed and evolved and reverted over time. So we're going to start with the evolution of dress, and we're going to talk about the four major functions of dress and what those four major functions often denote. The most obvious function of dress, of clothing, is to provide warmth and protection from the elements, right? And many scholars believe, however, really the first crew garments weren't just made for warmth and protection. Those garments and ornaments were really worn by humans, were not just designed for some utilitarian purpose, all right, so to cover us, right, but really for religious and ritualistic purposes. So the advancements of garments being decorative actually were for a religious or ritualistic purposes, right? So there are a couple of functions that dress includes that help identify the wearer, right? So it provides information about sex and age and occupation, social status. It may be an outward display of religious status. Um, it may be a display of political views as well. So it makes the wearer appear either more attractive or it defines their personality, okay? And, it's clear why such uses of clothing was developed and remains significant. And it's, often garments that are the most beautiful offer no protection whatsoever. They're just beautiful, right? And as we go through each period, we will talk about things that people wore that were just beautiful, that had no utility whatsoever. We talked a little bit about how part of the purpose of dress is to, display the human physique. And, for thousands of years, governments have tried to control how the human physique was displayed, more so by regulating how women displayed their physique more so than men. But for thousands of years, there have been regulations. And some of those regulations, include what are known as sumptuary laws, which is a little bit different than a regulation on what you could wear, but how you could wear it, right? So sumptuary laws are just laws that regulate consumption, right? So regulates, how we spend, like the showing of the ostentatiousness of our dress. And Drake says, what does he say? I wear every chain even when I'm in the house. That's probably not the right lyric, but that's the sentiment of the lyric, right? So the flossiness, right? The flossiness. So that's what sumptuary laws cover. And the first sumptuary laws were actually in the Roman Republic in 215 BCE. BCE, we'll use that word later, before the Common Era, or BC, which is before Christ. Um, BCE is the non-religious term, right? And the first century laws ruled that women couldn't wear more than half an ounce of gold upon their person, and that their tunics should not be in certain colors, right? So again, how showy are you, right? So you can't wear red. Red was a hard color in ancient world as well. But you could only have certain colors that you can wear, and don't show too much gold, right? Sumptuary laws often try to control spending, and up until really recently, the outward flaunting and display of wealth was hazardous, right? You could actually be hurt, harmed, kidnapped, murdered, or killed if you had an outward display of wealth that someone could see just by your clothing and your adornments, right? So there were also laws that talked about wearing luxury fabric. So again, in the Roman Empire, fabric was so soft and luxurious and rare that it was only considered fit for a certain portion of the population. So again, that economic that the economic driver of fashion is something that isn't new. It's not new. Whenever you have a law, you always have a percentage of the population, a portion of the population that are going to rebel against that law. And a rebellion through your clothing choices has been a constant theme throughout history, right? Sometimes it's a rebellion against the establishment, or what the establishment, the legal, political, and legal system wants you to do. Um, it could be rebellion against a dominant fashion trend that has no basis or merit, right? Those are themes throughout the history of fashion. And so, sometimes the reasons for prompting that rebellion are to shock or to attract attention, to protest against a traditional social order, to avoid looks that are considered dated or outmoded, or just an outwardly display of something that you don't like in the political realm. I mean, if we think about, in the Me Too movement, it's been the knitted cap with the cat ears on it, right? If you think about it, it's the wearing of pride wear, right? Of the rainbow flag on every, type of garment that you can think of. It's, shirts with sayings on it, with something that establishes your stance, right? So um, really, rebellion is not new. And, one of the earliest forms of rebellion, and it continues to take, place today, is cross-dressing, right? So that's been that of women adopting male dress, which has been the more dominant version of cross-dressing throughout history. So women taking on garments that are traditionally considered male garments, and using them to their own purpose. So we'll say things like pants, right? So pants are something traditionally that women weren't allowed to wear, really, more than anything. We weren't allowed to wear. So taking on that, so adopting of male dress. And if we look back at things such as, if we just look at recent American history, and when I say recent, we're going back, to the 20s, women donning male attire. So you can't see my air quotes with male attire. So pants or suits or hats or tuxedos, right? Adopting that. And then more recently, a form of rebellion has been it's been men taking on female dress. So like the movement for drag, of men transforming themselves into women, or just the adoption of traditional female clothing, again you can't see my air quotes, into a male perspective. So although in some countries, wearing tunics and skirts have not been frowned upon, they really have been in the United States. And you now see a movement of you know fashionable men, right, that are, um, in a commercial sense, donning more traditionally female articles of clothing. Let's dig into the four motivations for dress. So the purpose of dress, right? So there are four motivations. One is protection, right? So protections from the elements when needed, right? You need to get some protection from the elements for survival. But humans, have seen really the origins of dress were actually in warm, not particularly cold climates. So not just protection from cold, but also protection from heat. And if think about some a Middle Eastern scene that you've seen. Um, those are some of the most dressed people that you see from head to toe, right? They have something on. It's a light color, but they have something on. So protection from heat and sun just as much as protection from cold climates, right? And then part of that protection um, often is in a spiritual or religious sense, right? So there is some protection from my air quotes supernatural, supernatural protection, right? Those spiritual dangers that thought that surround each individual, and oftentimes those are not just seen in the garments, but they're seen in the adornments that people wear. So they wear a cross, or they wear a rosary, or they wear some type of religious adornment that they use as a protection, an evil eye or something. They use a protection against some spiritual battle, right? Um, the other motivation for dress, in most cultures, and actually, I'm in almost every culture, dress, fashion denotes status, right? You can Oftentimes we judge people on what they wear, and their status is judged by what they have on, what they came in the door with, right? This function became attached to dress after clothing first came into use, right? So as humans evolved and began to acquire things and not live communally, as much communally, right? So live a little bit more of an individualistic lifestyle. Status was attached to what you wear, and status is still attached to this day, right? Um, the next thing is the modesty piece, right? So and what constitutes modesty differs from society to society, and what is modest in one part of the world is not modest in another. So that's one of the other motivations for dress. And then the last, and this is how we express our style, right, is decoration, right? Human body is universal for the most part. We have all the same components, just in what shape or size they are. And you know, cl- there are cultures in which clothing doesn't just exist, but it's all about what you do with it, and the decorations and the adornments, and either the stacking of the overtly over adorned, or the overtly under adorned, right? And again, decoration itself is a basic human practice. So even in environments where everybody wears the same thing, how they wear that thing, right, can be vastly, vastly different.